Now I want to talk about kind of what's going on, I think, writ large. There's this topic that I talk a lot about on the podcast, and I'm not the only one to observe this, but I really feel that we're in a trust recession overall. I think that's for everything, political institutions, you name it. But I think it's even worse if you sell what we all sell, which is, a service, right? It was just something where people don't get to experience the benefit until weeks or months after they've hired us, right? So it doesn't mean that we have bad businesses, and it doesn't mean that there's, nothing we can do about it. It just means that we have to label and understand the dynamic. So what we found to work is by, instead of going in cold, going where we already have trust and where there was prospects that are likely to trust the agency already. So some of you may have seen this before, but just to refresh, when it comes to outbound, so to narrow in on outbound and the concept of contacting somebody that could be a fit and looking to engage in a sales conversation, there's been this kind of classic playbook. I would define it as popularized by the predictable revenue model, and it was largely built for software businesses. So I think there were issues with it from day one for consultative and B2B services and so on, but I think it's gotten worse over time. But to define it, what it looks like is it's really obsessed with finding and converting buyers. So the copy is very much like, we sell this thing. Do you want it right now? Um, and with software, $50 a month software product, that's kind of more feasible. It's also the market might be a lot bigger too. Uh, it's built around a BDR or an SDR or a salesperson that is junior, but isn't able to offer a lot of value on that call a lot of the time. It's built on mass outreach. Some would call it spray and pray of contacting thousands of people weekly, which becomes harder and harder to pull off based on what we just talked about, which is the idea of specializing over time, right? Your market isn't going to be that massive, and it pays to do this right. It's also very cold outreach centric. I'm not saying we never do cold outreach, but we try to de-emphasize it and go in with some kind of advantage, which I'll talk about. It's based on a complicated tech stack, which is great for a funded company. But back to the who part at the beginning of this, if you have one owner who's busy, it's tough to do every channel under the sun right from the jump. And also, the biggest thing is it assumes that awareness is the missing ingredient. If only people knew more about my thing, then they would buy it. And I'm not saying that awareness isn't important, but there's a different emphasis here. So, our approach, we call relationship sales at scale, is built on first building relationships with the prospects instead of just looking for buyers all the time. Because if you only look for buyers, tiny sliver of the market, it's great when you come across them, but you're neglecting, building this trust and this relationship with everybody else in the market. It's based on a salesperson who can offer value. Like I talked about, that's often an owner, but later on it could be a biz dev person, but it's somebody that is going to be able to help somebody on a call, not just say like, here's our widget. Do you want the widget? Right. Um, it's built on lower volumes, so contacting hundreds of people weekly based on the nature of specialization in the market. It's based on commonality-driven outreach among referral generation, which I'll talk more about. This means an important question that sometimes comes up, and people will be like, "How does this scale? How do you actually scale this process?" Even though it's called relationship sales at scale. And the reality is, what scales overall is developing individual campaigns that where there is a commonality that's inherently scarce, right? So the process overall scales, but each individual campaign does not. And that's really what makes it work because ultimately we value that which is scarce. And I'll get more into how that works shortly. Also, a big part of this is having a simple tech stack. Basically, with most with people in the program, we start with email largely. We're doing other things with LinkedIn to get data, but there's pros and cons to channels. Email has its ups and its downs, same with LinkedIn. But starting with one creates a process that you can manage and get results from early, and then you can add on more channels over time. And the most important element of this is that it functions on the assumption that trust is the missing ingredient, not just awareness alone, especially for an agency service, right? So, really what we're looking to do with outbound is to help people go up these levels or to possibly find people that might already be at a higher level. We're not looking to take somebody who's a one and get them to go to five, right? We're not going to contact somebody who is interested and has some problems. They might be whatever the CMO of a large company and say, great, like here's my email. Are you ready to invest six figures in our service? And when I say that, most people nod their head and it makes sense. But if you look at like 99% of the outreach we see, it's sort of functioning under that assumption. So all we're trying to get people to do is climb up this trust ladder. And the good news is, like, as soon as you've gotten on a call with somebody, you've put a face to a name, you've had a conversation, you're getting up at least one or two levels, right? And then it's about nurturing them and being in touch and all of that good stuff. So that's why I think that outreach can really shortcut this in a way.